Mental models are frameworks that give people a representation of how the world works. There's so many mental models that it would take a very long time to study them all in detail. Some are rooted in biological observations, others have been described in behavioral studies. To put it simply, mental models are a set of beliefs and ideas that we consciously or unconsciously form based on our experiences. They guide our thoughts and behaviors and help us understand life. They're basically thinking tools, kinda shortcuts for reasoning. For instance, knowing about network effects or about the law of diminishing returns helps you think about systems. Knowing about incentives or the availability heuristic helps you think about human relationships. Knowing about arbitrage and scarcity helps you think about markets and economic trends. While mental models are fundamental to understand how our mind works, they're far from perfect. They need to be used in context, and often in combination. As many mental models are reflective of the complexities of human nature, some are also good to know about in order to avoid falling prey to them. So, without further ado, let's have a look at 30 mental models to add to your thinking toolbox. Okay, first, anchoring. This is a cognitive bias, where an individual relies too heavily on an initial piece of information, which is called the anchor, when making decisions. The second one is backward chaining. This is working backward from your goal. Next, classical conditioning. You've probably heard about Pavlov's dog. Classical conditioning is a learning method in which a biologically potent stimulus, such as food, is paired with a previously neutral stimulus, let's say a bell. The neutral stimulus comes to create a response, salivation, that is usually similar to the one created by the potent stimulus, in this case, food. Commitment and consistency bias. This is the desire to be and appear consistent with what we have already done. Common knowledge is knowledge that is known by everyone or nearly everyone, usually with reference to a particular community. Common knowledge doesn't necessarily mean truth, but most people will accept it as valid. A comparative advantage is the ability to carry out a particular economic activity, such as making a specific product, more efficiently than another activity. Diversification is the process of allocating your resources in a way that reduces the exposure to any one particular risk. Now, economies of scale. These are the cost advantages that businesses obtain due to their scale of operation. The larger the scale, the smaller the cost per unit. Okay, what's an efficient market hypothesis? It's a theory that states that prices fully reflect all available information. The hypothesis implies that it should be possible to consistently beat the market, since market prices should only react to new information. One you've probably heard about, game theory, is an umbrella term for the science of logical decision-making in humans, animals, and computers. Hyperbolic discounting is a model which states that, given two similar rewards, people show a preference for one that arrives sooner rather than later. Illusion of control. This is the tendency for people to overestimate their ability to control events. An incentive is something that motivates or encourages someone to do something. The inversion principle is the process of looking at a problem backward. For example, instead of brainstorming forward ideas, imagine everything that could make your project go terribly wrong. Loss aversion. This is people's tendency to prefer avoiding losses to acquiring equivalent gains. We're basically more upset about losing $10 than we are happy about finding $10. Next is margin of safety. In a business, this is how much sales levels can fall before a company reaches its break-even point. You have probably heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a 5-tier model of human needs, often depicted as a pyramid, in which needs lower down in the hierarchy must be satisfied before people can attend to needs higher up. In order, the needs are physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. Mechanical advantage, also called the law of the lever. It's a measure of how much your strength is amplified by using a tool or mechanical device. Mere exposure effect. It's a psychological phenomenon by which people tend to develop a preference for things merely because they're familiar with them. Next, norm of reciprocity. It's the expectation that we repay in kind what another has done for us. Normal distribution is a theory which states that averages of samples of observations of random variables become normally distributed when the number of observations is sufficiently large. Okay, next is operant conditioning. It's a learning process where the strength of a behavior is modified by reinforcement or punishment. Redundancy is the duplication of critical components of a system with the intention of increasing its reliability. For example, a backup or a failsafe. Scarcity is the limited availability of a commodity, which may be in demand in the market. Basically, when something is in short supply. Signaling theory is the science of determining whether people with conflicting interests would be expected to provide honest signals rather than cheating. Status quo bias is a preference for the current state of affairs where the current baseline is taken as a reference point and any change from that baseline is perceived as a loss. Supply and demand is an economic model which postulates that, in a competitive market, the unit price for a particular good or service will vary until it settles at a point where the quantity demanded will equal the quantity supplied, resulting in an equilibrium for price and quantity transacted. Okay, almost done. Surfing, which has nothing to do with wakeboarding, is the business principle of riding the wave of a new technology, product, or trend. Survivorship bias is the logical error of concentrating on the people that made it past some selection process and overlooking those that did not, typically because of their lack of visibility. It happens a lot in entrepreneurship. And the last mental model in this video, tribalism, which is a way of thinking in which people are loyal to their social group above all else. I hope you found these definitions helpful. Thanks for watching!